Starring Yak Dude again, and today I'm here to work on the second installment of the Precision Flight tutorial series. Today we're going to talk about wind correction and flying in the wind while you're going through sequences, precision maneuvers, or even 3D. Basically what I'm going to show is wind coming from different directions, either coming in, going out, or straight down the runway. And we're going to work on doing precision light maneuvers and correcting to keep the airplane on a consistent line. So, to start out with, I have a direct headwind of about 5 miles an hour of wind. In real flight, the wind isn't completely realistic, so it's a little more than 5 miles an hour. So, I'm going to go ahead and show how to correct in the wind when you're going vertical, or going into a 45-degree angle, or even doing rolls, different elements like that. This will be a little bit of a long video with different elements, but I think it should be very helpful and should be noted, because wind correction is one of the most important factors when you're flying precision aerobatics. So let's get into it. I'm going to pretend like I'm going to start a sequence here, just like anyone would. So I'll take off, make a turnaround maneuver, and come back down the field. As anyone should know, when you're going downwind, the airplane will carry more speed, which you'll need to take into account. Also, making minute corrections to keep the airplane straight, just using a little bit of aileron to keep the wings from tipping, and a little bit of elevator and rudder here and there. First, I'm going to pull a vertical line on center to show what the airplane does when I pull perfectly vertical with a headwind. As you can see, the airplane gets blown back a little bit. This will increase depending on how much wind you have, and should be corrected. What we're going to do is we're going to pull the line, and we're going to make the airplane stop probably at about 80 degrees instead of 90. As you can see, when I stop here, the airplane actually keeps a vertical line, but it looks like it's actually going up at an angle. The reason it does this is because as the wind travels over the airplane and it's trying to crab into the wind, keeping it actually on a perfectly straight line. While flying through sequences, this is permitted, and if the judges are catching it correctly, they'll know that you're making proper wind correction and will not downgrade you for this. Also, when going into a 45-degree angle in wind, the maneuver should be a little less steep so you're not getting blown back. This is about a 45-degree angle when flying into wind. The airplane is following a 45-degree track, but staying slightly crabbed into the wind so it doesn't get heavily blown off course. The same applies for downwind, slightly differently though. Here I'll show, when I pull vertical, I'm going to pull a little bit past vertical so that the airplane's keeping a perfectly straight line, but again, looks like it's crabbing into the wind. Downwind also for 45-degree angles should be slightly steeper. This is a 45-degree angle when headed downwind. It's basically the opposite of upwind, but with time, you'll get both of them down and neither of them will be a worry. Rolls and things like that aren't really made different when heading into the wind. They become slightly more unstable and a little harder to manage, but really nothing to worry about. Just getting your rudder and elevator timing down with your usual rolls will help that. Now, when doing a rolling maneuver that's more advanced, like a rolling circle, you'll notice that when going downwind, you're going to have to make the back end a little bit tighter, like so. I'm making the back of this maneuver very tight so as not to get blown downwind, but while headed upwind, I have to make it pretty big so I can get into the wind, so when I come back around to center, I'm where I want to be. Obviously that wasn't a perfect maneuver, but it started and ended in about the same place. So, when heading downwind, make your maneuver much more aggressive. Make the pull very aggressive so you can get back to where you need to be and not get blown in by the wind. When heading upwind, make the maneuver very large. Drive the airplane into the wind and don't be afraid to use all of your throttle if necessary. If you're running a big engine in a big airplane, or even just a big engine in a small airplane, you have the power to use it in the wind. It's definitely necessary and it can't hurt. Next, what we're going to work on is a crosswind. I'm going to go ahead and stop this video, land, change the crosswind, and get right back with you guys in just here in a second. Okay, everybody, and we're back with a crosswind. As you can see, we're at right about 8 miles an hour, which is a little more than 8 miles an hour, but I wanted a little bit more wind in this section of the video just so I could really show the results of what we're doing. So we're going to take off here again, make a turnaround, and I'll show you guys how to correct in a crosswind. I'm actually going to bump this down a little bit. It's just a little bit too much. Unfortunately, the wind in real flight is not very realistic. 8 miles an hour probably equates to like 15. So I will do my best, and here we go. So when working in a crosswind like this one, it is blowing in. So of course the airplane, while on its track, is going to blow in a little bit, as you can kind of see here. I realize it's not a perfect demonstration, but I've come into the field a lot, and now I'm actually lined up with myself. This of course doesn't work when you're doing any sort of flying, be it precision, 3D, or especially at a contest, as your scores will drop dramatically. So what we're going to do here is show crabbing into the wind while going through different sorts of maneuvers. So as you can see here, I'm going to be holding a little bit of left rudder to keep the airplane slightly angled into the wind and keep it on a very consistent line. Now, it should be noted that when you're doing wind correction, never ever use your aileron to correct. This will make downgrades on your maneuvers and also make your flying look more sloppy. Always use your rudder to make wind corrections, as it'll keep the airplane on a much more consistent line. It'll become very much more manageable, and it looks a whole lot cleaner. So as we can see in this maneuver, the airplane naturally tries to crab into the wind. You're going to have to give it a little more crab angle than this, and also be using the rudder in the other directions that you need to while going through the maneuver to keep it on a perfectly straight line. The rudder will change when you're inverted or upright, or depending on which side of the field you're coming from, and the inputs will change as well. Sometimes you may give a little too much rudder, move out, so you may need to bump it back in with a little bit of opposite rudder. As you see here, the airplane's going to crab while doing this push, but the actual line will stay the same. Now I've come out on my 45-degree line, still using rudder to crab it into the wind, do a snap, and I'm right where I want to be. Exactly where I started. When doing maneuvers more advanced, maybe like a rolling loop, as I'll show here, the wind correction will of course become more difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a show here. See if I can do a rolling loop in the wind. This is a 3D airplane set up for 3D, so it's not perfect for precision. So I'm having to use down elevator a little bit and rudder to keep the airplane on a perfectly straight line all the way through the maneuver. Like in the last video, this wasn't perfect, but it gives you a demonstration on what we're doing. Doing maneuvers with knife edge, you'll have to give it a little bit of down or up elevator, depending on where you're coming from, to correct for the wind as well. Wind correction does use elevator and rudder almost always at the same time, especially while doing rolls. When you have a slow roll, you'll be mixing elevator and rudder in a whole lot more than you would if you didn't have wind. Like right now, I'm using a little bit of up elevator to keep the airplane from getting blown in. You wouldn't normally do this if you didn't have any wind, but it is mandatory that you do so here. This will also count for wind that is blowing out, but of course the corrections will be different. Instead of crabbing into the wind to keep from getting blown in, you simply crab into the wind the other direction to keep from getting blown out. Obviously that's not going to work here because the wind is blowing in. So I think that is about all for wind correction. If you need any guides on elevator or rudder inputs for your wind directions or how much to use, you're welcome to hit me up and ask away. So I think that's the end of our video today. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I hope you enjoy the videos to come. Thank you very much.